Have you ever been in a situation where just your immediate reaction, maybe anger or panic, it just completely takes over?
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe you snapped at someone you care about, or you felt totally overwhelmed and just froze up wishing you had like a mental rewind button.
Yeah, we all know those moments. It feels like your emotions are just this runaway train pulling you towards something you regret later.
Exactly.
Uh,
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission, as always, is to guide you through a whole stack of sources, research, articles, our notes, and pull out the really key insights.
And today we're doing a deep dive into develop self-regulation, master your impulses and reactions for calmness.
Yeah, we're going to look at why emotions have such a powerful grip,
Yeah.
and what's the real difference between just reacting versus thoughtfully responding.
And most importantly, we want to equip you with some really concrete tools, things you can actually use to find a bit more inner calm no matter what's going on around you.
You should walk away with some hopefully surprising facts, but definitely practical techniques to feel more in control of your own emotional landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Our emotions, they aren't just random feelings, are they? They feel like these incredibly powerful forces.
Yeah, like an internal energy. They can really push us forward or sometimes hold us back quite significantly.
And the sources suggest that strong emotions, if we understand them, can actually help us get past obstacles, both in our minds and, in the world around us.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating is just how fundamentally emotions communicate. They talk to others and they talk to ourselves.
How so?
Well, think about facial expressions, right? They seem almost hardwired, communicating way faster than words ever could.
Ah, okay.
And your body language, the tone of your voice, all of it sends these incredibly clear signals. It influences people whether you mean it to or not. And then internally, those emotional reactions, they're like these finely tuned alarms or signals. They give us important, sometimes even life-saving information about what's happening.
Right, that gut feeling people talk about.
Precisely. It can be a really potent form of intuition, kind of prompting us to pause, maybe check out the facts, look a little deeper.
Okay, building on that then, this is where I found it gets really interesting. Because even though emotions are signals, sometimes we act as if they're absolute facts, undeniable truth.
That's a crucial point. And the stronger the emotion feels, the stronger our belief that it must be true.
Yeah, like the example, if I feel unsure, well, I must just be incompetent. Or if I feel afraid, there absolutely has to be danger.
Right, and that kind of thinking, as we know, can lead us incredibly astray. It clouds our judgment.
Which really brings up this big question, doesn't it? Are you reacting or are you responding?
Yes. When we just react, it's often really quick, almost primitive, and it's intensely focused on just getting rid of that immediate feeling, the angst, the anxiety, but that narrows our world. We lose perspective, and that's often when we quit something or lose our cool or just spiral into panic.
It's like our brain is just yelling, forget the future, just do something, anything right now to make this awful feeling stop.
Exactly. Responding, though, is fundamentally different. It involves slowing things down, really navigating the situation, allowing yourself to feel anxious or uncomfortable without that immediate jump into action or trying to escape.
Creating a bit of space.
Precisely, creating space between the trigger and your action. And what's quite striking in the research is that when people struggle with emotion regulation, it often shows up as this clear mismatch between their goals, what they actually do, and what the situation demands. And this is often linked to some serious challenges, symptoms of depression, anxiety, eating disorders, even substance abuse problems.
Wow.
But on the flip side, higher levels of emotion regulation, they correlate really strongly with a greater social competence, more appropriate emotional expression, basically healthier relationships and a more balanced life.
Okay, so that's the goal then. But how do we actually do that? How do we shift from those knee-jerk reactions to, calmer, more thoughtful responses? It sounds like it's not about just stuffing emotions down.
No, not at all. It's about choosing how we engage with them. And the good news is there are several really powerful research-backed strategies we can learn and practice.
Okay, let's hear them.
Let's start with what the sources call antecedent-focused strategies. These are things you can actively do before the emotion really takes hold. Think of them as sort of preemptive strikes against getting hijacked by your feelings.
Ah, getting ahead of it.
I like that.
Exactly. First one, situation selection. This is simply making a conscious choice to either avoid or maybe approach a future situation that you anticipate will be emotional.
Okay, like what?
Well, a simple example might be a parent seeing their child getting overwhelmed in a noisy place and deciding to remove them before a full meltdown happens. That's avoiding.
Or maybe someone working on social anxiety might intentionally choose to approach a small, manageable social gathering instead of just avoiding all social contact.
Yeah.
That's building tolerance.
Got it. Choose your battles or choose your environments. What's next?
Then there's situation modification. So if you can't avoid the situation, maybe you can change it.
Okay, tweak it somehow.
Yeah, actively alter the situation itself to shift the emotional tone. So imagine you're in a tense meeting. You might try injecting a bit of, appropriate humor to get a laugh and lighten the mood, or even just subtly increasing the physical distance between yourself and someone you're having a tense conversation with. Little changes to the environment can change the emotional outcome.
Interesting. Okay, what else in this before the storm hits category?
Next up is attentional deployment. And a key technique here is distraction.
Distraction. We all do that sometimes.
We do, but this is about using it strategically. If you're already feeling that emotion start to bubble up, you deliberately direct your attention away from whatever's triggering it and focus on something else entirely.
Does it actually work? Like scientifically?
Yeah, research shows it can significantly reduce the intensity of both painful physical sensations and difficult emotional experiences. It actually seems to decrease neural activity in the amygdala, that's the brain's emotion center, and it genuinely helps alleviate distress.
Wow.
It's particularly useful for those really high-intensity negative emotions. It helps you kind of filter out the stuff that feels overwhelming.
Okay, that's really useful. What's the last one in this group?
The last antecedent-focused strategy is cognitive change. This is basically about reinterpreting the meaning of a situation, changing how you think about it.
Right. I was really struck by something related in the material. They called it cognitive zooming.
Ah, yes. Tell me about that.
Well, the idea is that when we're stressed, our thinking often gets really narrow, like tunnel vision, right? We get locked onto the problem.
Happens all the time.
So to zoom out, they suggested trying these little mental exercises, like brainstorm completely unconventional uses for a common object, say a brick. Instead of just building, maybe imagine grinding it up for finger paint. Silly stuff, maybe.
But it serves a purpose.
Exactly. Or find weird connections between totally unrelated things. The point is to deliberately push your mind beyond its initial narrow focus, broaden your attention, your creativity, and kind of shift your brain out of that stuck mode.
That's a fantastic, practical way to think about it. And from a more clinical perspective, we often call this kind of cognitive change, checking the facts.
Checking the facts, okay.
You actively ask yourself questions like, is my emotion really justified by the actual objective facts here? Or am I layering on interpretations? You challenge those judgments, those black and white descriptions. Ask, what are my assumptions? Could there be other ways to see this? Am I assuming a threat that maybe isn't real?
And that crucial question.
And crucially, if the absolute worst case scenario did happen, how would I actually cope? Could I handle it? And finally, does the intensity and the duration of this feeling truly fit the facts?
That all sounds incredibly logical when we're sitting here talking about it. But how on earth do you do that when you're actually in the grip of a strong emotion? When your brain feels like it's screaming something else entirely?
That's the challenge, absolutely. It's precisely through that structured questioning, even if it feels artificial at first. It helps engage your rational mind, your prefrontal cortex, and create that little bit of crucial space for reflection. It takes practice, a lot of practice.
Okay. So those are ways to kind of get ahead of the emotion or reframe it as it's starting. What about when it's already here? Full-blown, the runaway train has left the station.
Right. That's where the response-focused strategies come in. And a particularly powerful one is called opposite action.
Opposite action sounds counterintuitive. It really is, but it's incredibly effective. The core idea is this. If your emotion is not actually justified by the facts of the situation, or if acting on the urge that emotion gives you is not effective for your long-term goals, you deliberately do the opposite of what that urge is telling you to do.
Wow. Okay, give me some examples.
Okay, let's take anger. The urge is usually to attack, right? Verbally, maybe even physically in extreme cases. Opposite action would be to gently avoid the person, take a time out, actively try to be kind, or even just imagine understanding or feeling empathy for them.
So instead of lashing out, you create distance and try to shift your internal state.
Exactly. Or take fear. The natural impulse is to flee or avoid whatever you're afraid of.
Yep.
Opposite action means you gradually, carefully approach and engage with what you fear, Maybe speaking up in a meeting instead of staying silent. Trying a new activity that makes you a bit nervous.
So you're showing your brain the threat isn't as big as it feels.
Precisely. You build new, less fearful associations. How about sadness? The urge is often to withdraw, isolate yourself, become inactive, crawl under the duvet.
Right. Opposite action here is to increase pleasant events, even small ones. Pay active attention to the present moment, maybe through mindfulness. Change your body posture, stand up straighter, head up, shoulders back, and increase physical movement, like going for a walk or doing some exercise.
So you act as if you feel better, even if you don't yet.
You got it. Think about what a happy, engaged person does and choose those actions. It can actually start to shift the feeling itself.
Okay, one more. What about shame or guilt? Those are tough ones.
They are, and there's a nuance here. First, if the shame or guilt is not justified, meaning you didn't actually violate your core values, or the feeling is way out of proportion, then opposite action might involve carefully making your characteristics or behavior public, but only to people you trust won't reject you.
Okay, why?
To lessen the power of the shame. Or maybe even repeating the behavior without hiding it if it's safe and appropriate, again, to show yourself it's not catastrophic.
Yeah.
But now if the guilt is justified, you genuinely did violate your own values.
Right, you messed up.
Then, opposite action is about taking responsibility. Apologize sincerely. Repair the harm if you can. Commit to avoiding that mistake again. Accept the consequences gracefully.
That makes sense.
And then this is crucial. You actively work on forgiving yourself and letting it go, focusing on learning and moving forward, not staying stuck in the guilt.
That is incredibly powerful. Actively working against the urge.
Yeah.
Feels like a very deliberate choice to, like you said, rewire those default pathways.
It is. It takes conscious effort, especially at first.
But beyond these sort of in-the-moment fixes, what about building up more general resilience, a more holistic, proactive approach so you're just less vulnerable to these big emotional swings in the first place?
You've hit on a really core insight there. Because while these techniques are fantastic for handling difficult moments, wouldn't it be better if we could build a life that actually makes us less vulnerable to those intense emotions grabbing the wheel?
Yeah, absolutely. Like prevention rather than just cure.
Exactly. And that's where a framework called ABC Please comes in. It's not just a checklist. It's really about shifting how you structure your life to inherently reduce the conditions where intense negative emotions thrive. Think of it like building up a big buffer zone for your emotional well-being.
Okay, ABC, please. Break it down for us.
Right. A is for accumulate positive experiences. Actively, intentionally seek out and engage in activities that genuinely bring you joy or satisfaction. Listening to music, gardening, reading, quality time with loved ones, whatever works for you.
So banking positive feeling.
Basically, yes. It builds a crucial reserve of positive affect, making you more resilient when things get tough. B is for build mastery.
Mastery.
Engage in activities that make you feel competent and effective. This fights feelings of helplessness. It could be learning a new skill, finishing a challenging project at work, even mastering a new recipe. These moments reinforce your sense of capability.
Okay, A, accumulate. B, build. What's C?
C is go ahead. This means thinking about difficult situations you anticipate might come up and preparing an action plan.
Like rehearsing.
Exactly. Research the situation if needed, mentally rehearse how you'll respond, visualize handling it successfully. It reduces the shock factor and builds confidence.
ABC.
Yeah.
Now, what about the please part?
The please part focuses entirely on your physical well-being because our physical state has a massive impact on our emotional state. You can't separate them.
Makes sense.
So P is for treating physical illness and prevention regular checkups, managing chronic conditions. L is for maintaining low vulnerability to diseases, working with healthcare pros. E is for eating healthy, balanced meals.
Okay, PLE.
A is for avoiding non-prescribed mood-altering drugs. S is for getting healthy sleep consistently. And the final E is for regular exercise.
Please. Physical illness, low vulnerability, eating, avoiding drugs, sleep, exercise.
Exactly. These physical foundations are so critical. We all know from experience, right? Poor sleep, for instance, is hugely linked to more emotional distress, more anxiety. You simply cannot regulate your emotions well if your body isn't getting what it needs.
It really underlines the mind-body connection.
Absolutely. And it's also important to remember that this capacity for emotion regulation It doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It develops over time, and it's really significantly influenced by our environment, especially early on.
How so?
Well, caregivers play a huge role for infants. They essentially teach regulation through their own strategies, like selecting situations, using distraction. That foundational learning shapes us throughout life.
So what we learn early on really sticks.
It can, yes. Studies have even shown that kids who are frequently exposed to really intense negative emotions at home are statistically more likely to struggle with regulating their own emotions later.
Wow. That really highlights why learning these skills is so important.
It does. It shows why getting education on emotional regulation, like what we're talking about today, can genuinely mitigate risks for things like increased anxiety, depression, and difficult behaviors down the line. It underlines how important it is to learn and practice these skills really at any age.
Okay, so wrapping this up then, what does this all really mean for you, the listener?
I think it means that developing self-regulation isn't just about learning a few isolated tricks. It's really a continuous journey, isn't it? It's about building resilience and gaining a much deeper understanding of your own emotional responses. It's an active practice, a skill you have to hone.
Yeah, it's not a one and done thing.
Not at all. But the exciting news, as the research clearly suggests, is that the more you actually practice these strategies, like cognitive zooming when you feel stuck, or choosing opposite action when an urge feels overwhelming, the easier it genuinely becomes. You start shifting from that default reactive path to a more deliberate, calm, and effective response.
It actually starts to change your brain's default settings over time.
That's the idea, making those calm, considered responses more accessible, more automatic.
And ultimately, having higher levels of emotion regulation, it contributes so much, doesn't it, to your social competence, your ability to express emotions appropriately, constructively.
Definitely. It's about empowering yourself, not just for internal calmness and peace, although that's huge, but also for more effective, more fulfilling interactions with the world around you. It really can lead to a richer, more balanced, and honestly, more joyful life.
Wow. That really was a deeply insightful exploration. We covered a lot of ground there. From really understanding emotions as these powerful signals to seeing that clear difference between just reacting and actually responding, and then diving into that whole toolkit of strategies, situation selection, modification, the power of distraction, cognitive zooming.
And that counterintuitive but powerful opposite action.
Exactly. And not forgetting that bigger picture, the holistic strength you build with that ABC Please framework, looking after the whole system.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway really is that knowing this stuff is one thing, but the real value comes when it's truly understood and applied, put into practice.
Oh, yeah.
Self-regulation isn't about getting rid of emotions or becoming some kind of robot. It's about developing the wisdom and having the practical tools to navigate them skillfully.
Equipping yourself to choose calmness and clarity, even when life throws those curveballs.
Precisely. Even in those unpredictable moments.
So here's maybe a final provocative thought for you to mull over. The next time a really strong impulse bubbles up, anger, fear, whatever it is, can you just pause just for a few seconds and ask yourself, is this feeling really fitting the facts right now? Or am I maybe treating this feeling like it's an undeniable truth?
And maybe consider trying just one of the techniques we talked about today. Start small. Maybe a tiny bit of situation modification, or just a moment of deliberate distraction.
See what happens. Notice the shift, however small.
Exactly.
Well, we really hope this deep dive helps you on your journey to master your impulses and reactions for greater calmness and ultimately a more fulfilling life.
Thank you so much for joining us.
And we look forward to our next deep dive with you.